I went to Polaris. From Polaris, moved to Sterling. So currently, I'm working for Sterling Bank, the team lead on the alternative bank team. Yeah. So we are working on what's called Alt Bank. That is in between a fintech application and a digital solution app. So yeah, that's basically about me and my experience. So I would just like that this session be very interactive. Yeah. So just want to talk about technical skills roadmap, like what are the things that we're supposed to learn and in what order. Yeah. So because um I it was one of the mistake I made. I didn't have anybody, to take me through. So I was kind of just learning myself. So when I started learning Flutter, like I said before, I was a backend developer. I do Node.js, right? So one of those times I collected um, some videos from those senior engineers then, and some of those folders had Flutter tutorial. So one day I was curious. I really like to learn to just like, okay, what's in this Flutter? So I picked one of those folder and I checked it out. I really fell in love with Flutter. So I didn't really have anybody to like guide me, like tell me how to go about it. So I struggle with that. But what many people don't know is Flutter as a framework is very, very attractive, is beginner friendly. In if you're very serious in a day or two, you would be able to use some of those widgets. Yeah. But the real language behind it that so many people neglect it. And after a while, you start realizing that you need that to be able to be effective as a mobile engineer. Because Flutter is not just about, there's a popular saying in the Flutter community that everything in Flutter is a widget. Everything in Flutter is not a widget. But because you can easily pick up a Flutter course, you see widgets, text widgets. Even a beginner can put together those things for a first time tutorial and they'll build something and you feel like, oh, I built an application, but no. So that is very important. That's DART. So I didn't really, really pay attention to that until I felt I was experienced and I started getting gigs. I realized that I don't know anything. I'm like, I thought I could build, was doing this weather application, all of those simple apps. But when it comes to the logic part, I didn't really know how to go about it. So I had to go back. Um, I started looking for resources on that. I had to go back to that, even while I was already working full time. Yeah. So went back to that, started studying like I didn't know anything. I went back. I realized that I had missed so much. So I would advise that the number one thing, if you want to learn Flutter once you have started learning, make sure that apart from the widgets, the sweet side, and all those things, you have to go deep into that. You have to understand that as a programming language. And if you have basic programming language knowledge, you can transfer it to that too, because that is very similar to JavaScript, Java, and I think C is it C++. So so that was one of the things I missed. That language mastery is very important. So that's where you will learn control flows, functions, variables, inheritance, classics, mixins, all those things. And guess what? Even during interviews, some of these things are going to be asked. They'll ask you about a sync await, that's asynchronous method, taking care of calls, API calls, or any general delays. How do you handle them? All those things they're the logic part of Flutter. So that is very important. I would say the next thing is um, if I would teach someone Flutter, I'm not going to start with the widget and all of that. yeah, I can introduce them to it, but after that, you can practice more on your widgets. Flutter community has Flutter channel on YouTube has over hundreds of videos about widgets. So sometimes when I want to relax or I just have a break in between my work period, I just go there, check out some of those widgets that I don't know. Trust me, you can't know everything. So I just watch casually. But anytime I need to do something like that, I remember that, oh, I'd seen a video about this before. There was a time I was told to implement, I think, draggable stuff or something, or slidable to delete and all of that. I remember that I'd watched one widget video that could do that. So you may not necessarily need to watch to cram or store them in your head. Just watch casually. When the need comes, when it's time for you to use it, you will remember that, oh, you had seen something like this before somewhere. So I'm not going to downplay that. Those The UI part of Flutter is not important. It's very important too. So you take your time to understand stateless and stateful widgets. So if I may ask, can anybody tell me the difference between stateless and stateful widgets? Anybody here? Can just raise up your hand. Anybody? I just want this session to be interactive. Do I call someone? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so anyone who's going to tell me the difference between stateless and stateful widgets? Yeah, go ahead. Mary Precious.
Okay, I can try on stateless widget.
Okay.
Okay, on stateless widgets, values are not meant to change. Like,
Okay.
and on stateless widgets, we don't store states. I don't know what do I say. We don't
Okay.
store states. I don't even know how to put it, but I know that values are not meant to change, and we don't really store states. I've forgotten.
It's a good try. Well done. Yes, so
Thank you.
any other person want to try? Okay, let me just explain. So when you have components in your application that doesn't change,
So sorry
yeah.
to take you back, Mr.
Okay.
Clark.
Yeah.
I think Emmanuel has his hands raised as
Okay,
well.
Emmanuel. Okay. Emmanuel, go ahead.
Okay, good evening. I
Yeah,
think
good evening.
the stateful widget is the one that we use stateful widgets when we want to update changes. We want maybe a certain widget to have changes. Probably when there is a button and we want when it is pressed to cause a change, we use a stateful widget. Then, but if we don't want a change, we just want to create a widget. We can use a stateless widget. We don't want to change in the widget.
Okay, thank you. So can you give me an example where you can use a stateless widget in your application, a particular screen or
Okay, let's probably trying to do a UI design and you need a particular portion of it. Probably you need a card or a card widget or something. You can just create a simple file that is a stateless widget, such that you'll be
mm,
able to use the card in the other file, something like that.
okay.
So that's
Uh,
a stateless widget.
all right, thank you. Thank you. So your splash screen, does anybody agree with me that splash screen does not necessarily need stateful widget, right? It doesn't change. So if you are building a fintech application, your dashboard will definitely be a stateful widget. Why? Because you have a lot of components or variables that will change, especially your account balance, because you transact, and if you send out money debited, you want to see that, oh, If you're accredited, you want to see that, oh, somebody just sent me 5,000 naira. I had 10,000 before. Now it has changed to 5,000. So for a dashboard, you would definitely use a stateful widget. But for things, places where there is no variable or anything that would change, use a stateless widget. Yeah, so thank you, Mary and Emmanuel. Okay. Uh, the next thing I will advise that you learn is routing. So in Flutter, you have different type of navigation and routing. There's navigation 1.0, 2.0, there's named route, bottom navigation, couple of them. Yeah, so you need to understand routing. You need to understand where to use. I don't know where you guys had gotten to, but you need to understand where to use some particular type of push. You know, when you are routing, you have pop and push. If you pop, it means you are removing a screen because screens are stacked on top of each other. So if you're popping a screen, you're removing that screen from the top layer where it is stacked. If you're pushing, you're placing each screen on another one. So it's a kind of LIFO, like last in, first out. Yes, so there are some um, things you need to consider when you navigate because it's not just that simple. For example, if I'm navigating from signing to dashboard, I'm not just going to push. I'm going to push in a way that if I press the back button, I should not be able to go back to the signing. You get, there are things you'll consider when you're working on navigations. For example, if I'm moving from a success page back to maybe the dashboard for payment or back to the main dashboard, I am not going to use navigation or push alone. I'm going to push and remove that success screen because I don't want to go back. There's absolutely no reason for users to click the back button and still go back to the success screen. So those are the things you will consider when you're working on navigations and routing. So advice you learn that, and then the next thing would be state management. Now this is a very interesting topic because it sparks a lot of conversations online in Flutter community. So, and we have different kind of state management, from the very simple set states to scalable solutions like provider, block, riverport. Does anybody have experience using block, provider, riverport? Have you learned about it? Have you heard about it? Anybody has anything to say about any of this state management? Do you even know what state management is? Let me start from that. Does anybody know what state management is? What is state management? Why do we even need state management? Yeah, Emmanuel, I think you went before, right? Okay, just hold on. If there is no other person, I will take you. I want everybody to contribute. I'll call names. Oh. What is state management? Anybody? Before I call Emmanuel. What do you understand? You just say it in your understanding. Don't worry. You can just explain it to me. You don't need to. There is no. You can't. You see, I didn't even give you a definite definition. You can just explain it how you understand it. Anybody? Okay, Emmanuel, you can start.
Um,
Emmanuel, can you? Yeah.
uh, I don't even have to describe it, but it looks like a way of, should I say, probably sharing objects within widgets. I'm looking for
Sharing,
a better.
sharing what?
Okay, let me look for a better example. Which example can I use? I don't even have to explain it.
Okay, it's okay. Fine. Thanks for attempting. So let me explain it to you guys. State management is just combination of two words: state and management. We all know what management is. How you undo something, how you control something. Yeah. And what is state? I'll give you an example. If you have a box, right, with toys inside. So say I have 5 toys, right? If I take out one of them, what happens to the number of toys in the box? It changes. Instead of 5, you have 4 now. So that's a state change. Something has happened. Like the example I gave before. I have 10,000 naira in my account. Somebody credited me with 5,000. Something has happened. There is a change. Every time there is a change in your application, you need to find a way to manage it. That's just state management. Everywhere there is this change in your application, you need to find a way to manage it. You need to find a way to communicate to users that something is happening, something has changed, something is about to change. You get that is what state management is. So if I am making an API call and it's going to take 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 7 seconds, I need to be able to tell the users in a way that can you wait for 5 seconds? I am fetching maybe your account balance. And that's where the loader comes in. That's where you see that maybe you try to make a transaction, you see different kind of loaders and apps. That is just a form of state management to tell users that, oh, wait, hold on, something is happening. And when it's done, you will see the change. Either there's an error, a success. If there's a success, you see the desired change. You are routed to a success page, or the value change. If you are switching off or switching on something, you see that it's switched on or off. So that is state management. There are ways, different kind of ways we manage this. There is set state. What set state does is it will rebuild the particular screen where that change happened to update it. To let, like, for example, the toy example I gave, you have to let maybe the child that owns the toy know that I've taken out one of it. The remaining one is 4. I've taken another one. The remaining toy is 3. So how to manage all of those things is what state management is. Do you guys get? So we have different ways. We have provider, we have block, we have riverpod. I wouldn't say one is superior to another, but I've worked with block before, I've worked with provider before. I've worked a little bit with riverpod. I would say that block, they have the advantages and disadvantages. I will not really talk so much about it, but it's something very important for you guys to learn. One thing about block is it is well structured. You have your event, you have your state, and you have um the notifier. So I would say that I regard block as a, maybe we're talking about football, like a football academy kind of, where things are well organized, you have structures and all of that. I would regard provider as, say, street football, because provider is very simple to use and very flexible, like very, very, very flexible. While block is very organized, but it has a lot of boiler codes. In this explanation, I had given you guys pros and cons of the major state management we use. So you can learn more about it. It's very important that you know at least, are very good with at least one of those state management. So the next thing I would advise you learn is data persistence. It's very important. So when I say data persistence, I mean that you should be able to know the tools to use or how to save things locally on user's device. Say, let me give you a common example. If I want to save, if I want to, I'll give this example and I'll ask if there is any other scenarios you guys can think of where we can use data persistence. So let's say I want to save users username and email after their first login, so that the next time they're coming, They don't have to put in their email, right? What am I going to do? I'm going to save that. I'll collect that details the first time and save it locally on their storage, their phone storage, so that the next time they're coming, I will prefill the text box for their email or username. They do not have to enter it again. So you see that thing a lot in most of the application you use, where when the next time you're coming back, all you just have to do is put in your password, your email and username is there. Yeah. So the data persistence is what is used to achieve that. We have different types: SQLite, share preference. Share preference is very common. I'm sure you guys must have heard. Yeah, yeah, share preference. Then there is I'm trying to remember one. Hive, yes, there's Hive. There's secure storage. So you don't have to, yeah, you don't have to know everything at once. I'd only use Hive once all through my experience. I'd only use Hive once. I use secure storage and share preference very well. Exactly. You can also use that to save. Thank you very much. To save token, the bearer token. Yeah, so I've used SQLite once too on a particular project, a security project. So I I'm not a master of everything, but I'm saying this so that you don't feel like, oh, I have to learn so many. You don't have to learn all of them. You just have to know one very well. But if there is need for you to learn another one, you can easily transfer knowledge because these things are very similar. Basically, almost the same thing. It's just syntax change. Yeah. So after that, I would advise that the next thing you learn is API integration. Very important. API integration. So this is very deep. I'm not going to talk so much about it, but it's very deep. I mean, API integration is, and it's very interesting, right? Very, very interesting. We have different kind of API. We have RESTful API, GraphQL, WebSocket. WebSocket is for real time. Those things you use for push notification and chat. WebSocket. And you have yeah, I think those are the kind of APIs you have. But whichever way you consume them with almost the same method. So let me run through how you can consume an API. So we have different kind of calls, method calls for APIs. We have the REST, we have the get, we have the posts, we have delete, we have put, we have patch. Patch and put most of the time they are used to edit, to update a particular information. For example, if I want to log in now, I will put in my email and password. Most of the times, when you're sending something to backend, you use post. So this case for login endpoint, login APIs, right? You use post methods because you are sending email and password to the server, to the API. So you use a post method. But when you are trying to get information from the database, from APIs, use get, like the name. Say get customer details, get student details, get weather details, get account balance, all of that. When you want to get information. So I'm just trying to scratch the surface is way deeper than that. Yeah. So then you have the delete. Delete, as the name is, when you want to delete a record, delete a profile, anything delete, removal, use delete method. And then there are different kind of methods there are different kind of services you use to call those API. There are two common ones. You have HTTP method. You have the DO method. So they're just packages. HTTP is inbuilt, came with the Flutter SDK. Then you have the DO package. They are very easy to use. I believe that's when I don't know if you guys have got into API integration, but when you get there, you will learn more about that. And then the last one, my list, is testing. Testing is very important. Apart from the functional manual testing, you need to learn how to write unit tests, widgets, and integration tests. They are very important, like very, very important. And I'm not going to lie to you guys. Out of these three, the one I'm very confident, because writing tests is very stressful. I won't lie. For a project, you can write more than 10,000 tests. So don't beat yourself over it if you still don't know how to write tests now. It will take a lot of time. Me, right now, I can comfortably write unit tests. You see, integration test and widget tests, I don't write them. Unit test is also time consuming, but they are necessary because all of these issues that when you, especially when you're working in a team, you write something and another developer go change it, then you now have issues. You push to production, you start having production issues. Oh, something is breaking in production. It, your test would have saved you, because there's some things you put in place. Your application will not run because some tests are failing because somebody has touched something they're not supposed to touch. You get. So those are some of the importance of tests. Yeah, so I will leave it at that for technical skills roadmap. I don't know, Tammy, do I still have time? Do I still, how many minutes do I still have? I still have time, Abby. Okay, so I'll just go to the next topic. I don't know if I should entertain question here now before I move to the next topic. Tammy.
Yes, you can take questions here before going on
Oh,
to the next phase.
yeah, go on. Mary.
Okay, so what is really the use of the testing, writing testing? Is it a must that you write a test before your app will work?
Okay, so it's not a must. It's not a must. Like I said, I mentioned briefly that it's just for you to make sure that things are fine. Apart from, you have QAs, right, that will test. They will test the functionality, the UI, and all of that. But just for developers to, in their own way, make make sure that application does not regress. So there is a likelihood that if I work on transfer as a module and say I now go on a leave, so because I'm on leave now, there is a new change that is supposed to be made on transfer. Now my colleague is not really used to transfer module. If he goes there to work on it, he might break things, right? He might break things. He might maybe by mistake, he might comment some things that he's not supposed to comment. If you had written tests in such cases, he would not even be able to run the application successfully, because the terminal, there's a test portion. If you check your VS Code, you see where that is. It will alert you that some test cases are failing. So that way, you would not push bugs to production, because the testers are humans, they can miss it too. So that's one of the advantages of it. But it's not compulsory. It's just something, it's just a good to have. But as you grow, like in experience, you would, at a particular point, you might be required to have a test skills to be able to write tests. You get, especially if you are looking forward to foreign gigs and all of that. Some of them will require that you know how to write tests. Have I answered the question? Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay. Yeah. Kingsley, go ahead.
All right, thank you so much for the class, or yeah, for the session. My question is still on testing. I just wanted to know, is the testing after you've written it, did it also push as part of the code to production? Was it add up to the code base, or it's
The test.
domiciled in? Or
Yes, the test you wrote, the test you wrote. Yes. So when you push to your repository, it will be there.
Okay, so it doesn't add up to the AGK size
No, no,
after.
no, no, no. It doesn't affect. No, it doesn't affect the size.
All right, so I know this one. So, you've not talked about it yet, but what are some of the ways to have a smaller APK size in your work? How do you keep your, even though it's a complex solution, how can you, what are some of the measures you can use to ensure that the size is still relatively small
So
for users?
okay, yeah. So there are different. So number one, make sure you don't repeat yourself. Something called drive. Do not repeat yourself. Yeah. Create reusable components. Things that if you go through your designs, you would see that there are very similar cards. The text field, your password, text field, so many of those things, they are reusable. So usually I'll show you, I think I'll talk about it the next lesson. I'll talk about code structure. The particular one I use, there is a particular module called core, C-O-R-E. Any component or function, anything that you would use across all your modules in your application, you write them there and make them reusable. That will also reduce your app size in a lot of way. Then when you want to build, when you're building to submit, there is this popular command line you use, right? Flutter build app bundle. That in itself reduces your it bundles your app, right, and reduces the size. You can also add splits per APA, ABI. So those are some of the um, command lines you can use to reduce your app size, right? Also in your build Gradle, there is something called shrink resources, minify enabled. What else? I think there's one other one. You have to set them to true. So Android and iOS, they already put in things apart from the stuff you need to do yourself. You're already putting things in place to make sure that your app size is not too large. Yeah. So that by the time you are deploying to store, users are not complaining that oh this app is too large, it's 200 MB, this and that. You get.
Sorry, sir, please, can you mention the build commands you mentioned earlier? Can you mention them again? The alternative build commands.
Okay, okay, okay. So let me drop them in the chat, right? And drop them. I'll drop them in the chat here.
Okay, Mr. Ademola, before you move on
Yeah.
to the next phase, Tosin had his hands raised.
Okay.
And also, please check your WhatsApp messages.
All right. All right.
Thanks.
So, okay, all right, thank you, Timmy. So I think I'll just read to the end of the section, right, to ask my question. I think I'll do just that.
Okay. Okay. Please give me a minute. All right. So okay. So let me just talk about um career guidance. This is very very important because I've seen a lot of very good developers, but they don't have a well-paying job, and some of them they make mistakes. Is that they don't know how to negotiate, or they're not putting themselves out there. So it's very important that you know how to put yourself out there. You know what to look out for when you're being interviewed. So apart from being a software engineer, I also recruit. So I've been on both sides of the table as an interviewer, as someone you're interviewing to. So it's important that one skill I would say you need to learn is negotiation. You need to know how to negotiate. I'll just talk briefly about um, career guidance. One of the fastest way to grow, yeah, is building projects. So someone, a friend of mine told me that he went to his dad's office and he met a software engineer who is the MD of the office of the company. And the man asked him, as a software engineer, so the man asked him, so you're a software engineer, what are you doing right now? He said he wasn't doing anything. As a software engineer, there is nothing like I'm not doing anything. It's not possible. So that's a very wrong statement. You are either learning or you're working on a personal project. You can't be less busy. Seriously. You have to be doing something as a software engineer. So when they ask you, what are you doing currently? Even if you don't have a full-time job, you're just learning. You can't say you're not doing anything. Build projects, build personal projects. I had like 7, 8 projects, personal projects. It got to a point, most of the applications I was using on my phone, I developed them, my alarm system, my notes. And that really helped me. My first full-time role, I wasn't qualified. They were looking for about, I think, 3 to 4 years experience. I think at that time I had 1 or 2. So I wasn't qualified, but because of my portfolio, guys, see, this is very serious. As you progress, make sure you update your LinkedIn, your CV. If you have a personal website, cool. That time I had a personal website. Every single thing I do, I put them there. So applied. I can't even remember when I applied for the job, but the HR called me and was like, okay, they saw my portfolio, the website I attached to my CV. Were like, okay, for this number of years I've done this, they wanted to meet me. So the number of projects you do, yeah, will give you a lot of experience. Like, I don't know how to put this, but number of years is very relative though, but number of years is not really directly proportional to the experience you have, because there are some people who have a lot of years of experience, but the things that they worked on, the kind of project they built, are not so sophisticated like that. But you would see someone with 3 years had worked on so many. Now, I'm not saying you guys should take too much, but what I'm saying is at every point in time, make sure you're learning something, you're building. The more you build, the more you learn. I've had instances where it is because I'd worked on something before, I was able to implement it at a bigger stage. You know, when you are building for millions of users, the number of users that are using Vault, I think is more than 10 million or so. Those kind of projects, you don't make mistakes. You're allowed, so all the mistakes you want to make them when you're building your personal project, when you're building for 1,000 users and all of that. If you make mistake when you're building for those kind of volume, imagine a number of people using Vault, and you push a bug to production. It's a very, very so I would say that work on projects even while you're applying. Don't just stay and not do anything. Learn more, work on projects, add them to your CV, update your LinkedIn, your social media, talk about them, because the more you put yourself out there, yeah, the more you stand the chances. Yeah, so I recruit for I recruit for Sterling, I recruit for Polaris. I recruit for Walora, for Zedla, some of those companies. And personally, when I receive CV, what I'm looking for is the things you've done that they might not be related, closely related, but I mean, the things you've done, the applications you've worked on, that the kind of knowledge you've gotten from those works that you can transfer to this. Do you guys understand? Can you guys hear me? Do you understand? So those are the things recruiters are looking for. And then um, when you are preparing for interviews, if you have the JD, and you should have the JD, make sure that you fully understand the job description, because most times the questions they will ask you are from there. I'm serious. I'm giving you tips. If I'm interviewing something, I'm asking from the job description. Okay, this is what we listed that we want from. So when you come, I'll ask you, how do you undo asynchronous operations? How do you do this? So excuse me. How do you undo data persistence? How do you structure your code? What are the state management you use? Do you understand? Go through the job description. In fact, that way, just go through job applications for Flutter, pick out the job descriptions, look at the ones that you don't understand. That was what I did. Look at the ones they listed there that you don't know. Learn it. Keep learning. Then you have to know how to negotiate, to learn how to negotiate. If you don't know how to negotiate, like I said before, there are some very good developers, but they don't know how to negotiate, and they end up how do I put it? Short changing themselves, for lack of a better word, because those HR um they want to cut cost. So when they are interviewing you and after everything and they will ask you how much do you want? They trust me, they have their range already. But if you undergrade yourself or you feel, oh, I don't think I'm worth this already, if you give them a range, they will take it. Somebody gonna ask me, okay, how do I know what range based on my experience? That is why you have the community. That is why you have Dive, yeah. That is why you have people around you can ask. You ask them, okay, for so experience, what is the current, because that rate it changes. What's the current rate for this experience? I have an interviewer. I'm really not sure how to negotiate, how to go about it. Meet someone, a senior person. They'll explain to you. Some of those companies will ask you, how much were you earning in your previous company? You get, so you will be the one to let them know that, okay, you can't use a previous pay to judge the value I want to bring and all of that. So I believe I don't know if you guys really understand this, but I believe this is helping someone. Yeah, so very important. Then what else? In your CV, there is no useless tool. There's no useless skills. If you know how to use VS Code very well, include it there. Hmm. I've seen someone who was hired because I think he listed something interesting. What did he say? I think he said he's a guru in Google search or something. That really caught the MD's attention. I was like, okay, I want to hear from this guy. What does it mean by he's a guru when it comes to Google search? I hope you know that querying Google and all of those search tools is a skill too. So all of those soft skills, list them out. There is no skill that can be undermined. Don't undermine those skills. You never can tell which one would stand out for you. Yeah. And then learn how to use your Git workflow. Very important, especially if you're working in a team. One of the things that can bring you down very fast is if you don't know how to use those Git workflow like Azure repository, GitHub, Gitbucket. If not, you'll be causing troubles for the team. When you push and there is conflict, you don't know how to merge. Or when you merge, you now merge and remove somebody else's code. It will start it will cause production problem if it's not noticed. So you have to learn how to use those things, learn how to push, pull, commit, add, and all of that. So that's just that about this session. The last session is architecture pattern. I think I should share my screen for that. I'll just use one of the projects to explain the architecture. We have different kind of architecture, but so I will share my screen for that. For this career guidance, does anybody have any question? Try and move to the final part. Anybody? Okay. Um, okay. Since there's no question, let me just share my screen. I'll show you guys. Please let me know when you can see my screen. Can you see my screen now? Can anyone see my screen now?
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Okay. Okay, so we have different kind of architecture when it comes to software engineer, right? Not just mobile engineer, not just is a general concept. You have the MVC or the model view controller. You have the MVVM model view model and view. And then we have the clean code architecture. So for this class, I'm just going to be explaining with the clean code architecture because that's what I use. So this structure is very, very efficient. If any of you had seen or heard about Bob, I can't remember his other name now, but he has a very popular book on clean code architecture, right? He explained a lot of things. So I can get the link and send to maybe Temi so that the link to the book, you guys can check it out. But what is clean code architecture? It's a kind of code structure that helps you arrange your project in a feature-based manner. What do I mean by feature-based? You know, I am sure that by now, you guys should know that you should know the normal Flutter project structure. Every Flutter project would have an Android folder, would have an iOS folder, would have a library. This file, very important file, popspec.yaml, your git ignore to ignore some local environments, to ignore any files you don't want to push to live. Yeah, so the library is where your code lives in. That's majorly the codes for the project. Now, for this library, I have three folders in the library. I have the core, CORE, this. I have the features, filters, and I have shared. So I said earlier that core, the things you put inside core are assets, things that you can share throughout your applications, or things that appears in all your features. For example, if you are building this application now is alumni, a school app, right? So if you're building this kind of application, you would have students, you have the authentication because students will be able to sign up and log in. There is a campaign, as you can see, there is community, there is dashboard, there is dues, where they pay dues, and profile, sign up, and all of that. So these are features. So this is called feature-based approach. So core, all the things that are inside this core, they are things that you can share across all features. Maybe a common card, so that you don't have to repeat codes, and then you now have a large application. You have your, this is where you set your theme. I believe that you must have been taught theming and all of that. This is where you set your routing. You can see it, routing. In this code, I'm using Go Router. That's navigation 2.0. Don't bother yourself about that. Yeah. This is why I explain my network calls, because network call is something, this is where I call my endpoint. Network call is something I will use throughout the features. I will use network call in my authentication. I will use network call in my campaign. I will use network call in my profile. So imagine I'm rewriting them in each features. That's unnecessarily an unhealthy amount of time. I'm repeating those codes. So anything you are sharing across app, you put them in your course. Then you have the features. Now in your features, you have different kind of features depending on your application, but most applications have authentication feature, sign up and sign in. Most applications where you have forgot password to. Now, for inside each feature, now I have data. I have data and presentation. Each feature will have data and presentation. Now, in your data has to do with how you handle things that are going out of your app and things that are coming in into your app. Data has to do with how you handle things that are going out of your application and things that are coming into your application. What are the things that are going out of your application? Say you want to send, you want to log in, you have to send your email and password, or you want to send money to a friend, you have to put the amount, your transaction pin, the account number of the friend, and all of those information. You're sending them out. So you take care of those things inside your data. And when you are receiving information from APIs, you have to take care of them inside this data. Now, before I go to presentation, I'll talk about data. Now, inside this data, you have DAO, data access object. Now, DAO is a class where you have a generic model that accepts the response from the backend. I don't know if I'm going too deep, but are you guys following? Maybe I shouldn't. I don't know. Are you guys following at all? Are you following? Just let me know if you're following. So, okay. So you have the response model, right, in your DAO that accepts generic response at every endpoint. Now, for example, we return this so thing. So you can set that in your data access object. Then you have the data source. And the data source refer to where, as the name implies, data source, where you are getting data from, the source of your data. So it means that every endpoint you call must pass through. In fact, it is inside your data source that you're calling those endpoints. If you see here, see my class here, you will see that I have different endpoints. I have endpoints. Yeah, I have send OTP. I'm calling an endpoint to send OTP. I verify OTP. This, I'm sending an endpoint to verify OTP. Resend OTP. In case someone didn't get, or network is bad and you want to resend, there's an endpoint for that. And the endpoint that will register user. So this is where you will call all of those things and you accept them. This is where you call those endpoints to get data or to send data. So that is why it's called data source. Now, that's all what data source does. Then for the domain, like the name implies, the domain is like naming. You're naming something. So domain is where you serialize your data. Okay, fine. You have called an endpoint. and you have gotten a response, a good response. You have gotten a data from the backend. Now, how do you serialize it? How do you undo it? How do you make sure that the UI is showing the correct thing? Say I log in with my username Ademola, my password on the dashboard. How do I make sure that that place where it's showing hello Ademola, do I make sure that my name gets there and all of that? This is where entity comes in, domain. So this is where you write models that will serialize anything you are getting from backend. For example, if I make an API call to fetch countries, now what will be returned back is ID. Look at it. This, you will specify everything that will be returned back here in your code so that you can receive it. It's just like, I need you to see this part of the code as a container that collects what the backend is giving you, a container that accepts what the backend is giving you. So it has to mirror everything that the backend is sending. So if I call an API to get country, that API will return, that particular API that I'm calling will return ID, the country ID, the country name, the alpha code, M49 code, population, that's the number of people in that country, region, blah, blah, blah. All of those informations will come as additions to the API call for the country. Yeah. So that is what this folder does. It manages that. So data source, domain, they are things relating to data. That's why they are inside this data folder. Now, presentation. Presentation are things that you can see, the UI. This is where you write your UI. So the idea is you separate your UI from your class models, from your logics. You don't write logics in your UI. These are very, very valuable things that if you know from the beginning, it will really, really help you to advance you very fast. You don't write logics in your UI. Any logic you want to write will be outside your UI, your view. Then when you want to call it, there has to be a caller. There's a caller method you will use to call that method, but you don't write the main method in your UI. So that is why you have view and notifier. Now explain view. In your presentation, you have notifier and view. I'll explain view before I explain notifier. So for view is the UI, the things you see. Let me go to view, for example. This is where you write your screen, you have your scaffold, single chart scroll view. By the way, does anybody know what single chart scroll view is? Anybody? What is it? What's it? What does it do? Single chart scroll view.
All right. So sorry, I'm actually outside. So a single trace code view, right? It's used to move an like a widget, either horizontal or vertically in an axis.
Okay. Yeah, very well. Thank you. That makes sense. So Dive has really done a really good job. So if you have a screen that I don't have an app running, or I've shown you. If you have a screen designed and you see that it is extending the height, the content of the screen is extending beyond your phone size, so that your phone does not throw, your app does not throw an error. If you have seen an error that has this yellow, and you see this yellow like road safety, this thing, yellow and black, is it yellow and black or yellow and white now? An overflow sign, meaning that you are trying to force a longer content in a particular screen size that won't take it. So you use single chart scroll view to extend that. So even if that content is longer than the height of your screen, you'll be able to scroll, to allow you to scroll, like you said, vertically or horizontally, allow you to continue to scroll until you get to the end of that content. So these are where you apply your widget in your view. Or you have your image, center, widget, column, scaffold padding, SVG picture dot assets. Yeah. Yeah. So those are they are like Lego blocks. Those are the things you combine to build your UI. So the view folder is for presentations, for UI alone. You're not supposed to write logics in your UI. There's something I did here. I want to show you guys. If you see line 142, I don't know how bold it is. If you see from line 142 to 147, I am calling the login endpoint. But usually, when I first started, what I would do is I will write the logic inside this place, but it's not right. You don't mix logic in your UIs. So now what I'm doing is I am calling the login. That's the next thing I want to explain now. Where do I now write my logics? That's the next question somebody will ask. So you said I should not write my logics in my UI. Where do I write them? You write them in the notifier. The notifier is also placed in the presentation. Now, the notifier is the guy between your UI and the data. Remember, I told you that data handles anything that has to do with what you're collecting for backend. So let's say I've collected, for example, the country API I was using as an example. Say I've collected list of countries. Say I have 10 countries returned by backend on my APIs. Now, in my notifier, this is where I now manage. Oh, let me ask. I already said it, but let me still ask. If I am getting 10 countries from an API call and I want to show them on my view in my screen, what do I use to? How do I manage that? I don't want to say the actual word, but I'm already saying it. How do I? Which other word will I use now? How do I control that data to make sure that users will see it on their screen? Anybody? Does anyone want to try? I've mentioned that concept. No, this view builder. That's yeah. I understand. Yeah, you will use the widget list view to view them, but before, what is going to notify that list view builder that, oh, you now have a list that is coming from backend? You have 10 actually. There is something in between the data and the view that does that. Change notifier. Thank you. It is also called state management. In fact, change notifier is a type of state management. It is like the every state management will extend change notifier. Is an inbuilt class for state management. So notifier, or you can call them state management, they are the guys in between the things you collected and your view, what users will see. Now, in this project, I am using provider. So what I do is when I get a good response from backend, for example, this is the login method, right? After I call, this is what I'm calling the login method. Now, this is the logic. So like I said, you don't write this code I'm copying, you don't write it and put it inside the view. Before, this is what we do, but it's very wrong. So initially, before now, I write my logic here. I'll just call it where I need it here. But you don't do that. You write anything logic in another class. You can call it anything, notifier. If you're using block, call it you can call it anything, but you don't write your logic here. You write it in your notifier and call it where you need it. So say I want to log in now. I call my email and I send my email and password. Now, anytime you make an API call, two things happen. Two things. It is either it fails or it succeeds. If it fails, what this data.fold does is, if it fails, you need to tell users that, oh, unable to log in, maybe incorrect password or mail or bad network, whatever. If it fails, there's a particular block it will fall into. Now, if it is successful, there is a particular block it will fall into, this block. Now, what I'm doing is I'm now collecting those data, this particular line that I highlighted. I'm collecting whatever I'm getting from backend and saving it in a variable All of those logic and everything is done in the notifier, so that when I come to my view, I have placed a listener. This consumer, what it does is it listen for changes. Remember, state management, it is used to manage data change. It is used to, and the reason why this sign in is a stateful widget is because there are things that can change. Do you get? All of them are linked. So this consumer is a listener. It's going to be listening for change. And when there is a change, it will now tell user that, oh, you click the login button, there is a loader. You now see that a loader comes up and spin off. Oh, it is no longer loading. There is an error message, invalid login or password. You will see it, maybe a ladder dialog or bottom sheet. But if it's successful, oh, your login is successful, it takes you to the dashboard. That all of that is happening here in your notifier. So I think that's just like a rough summary of clean code architecture, where you arrange your folders based on features. I know that some of you would have, I don't know if I have another project that I can show you for MVM. MVM is just model view controller. That's another type of architecture where all your models, you put them in one folder, all of them. All your views, you put them in one folder. That's your sign up from your onboarding splash screen to the last screen you build. It will be in one folder like this. And your controller too will be in one folder. All your services and logics will be in one folder. That's MVC. Now, MVC is suitable for maybe simple projects and to build very, very simple project that doesn't have large features. But if you're building complex project that has a lot of features, I advise you go with clean code or MVVM at least. You can read more about them. You can watch tutorials, more tutorials and all of that about them. I think I've been able to explain architecture patterns. Don't know if I still have time. If you have, let me just stop sharing my screen. I don't know if anybody has any question, so we can wrap up with that. I think I'm done with my presentation. Do you have any question? Anybody? Any question?
Hi everyone. We have questions, and I want to ask, how has this session? Hope you get lost along the way. Yeah. First of all, we'll take questions first. If you have questions, please just indicate, and Mr. Ademola will take them before we wrap up tonight's session. Okay. Justin, please go ahead.
All right, thank you, Temi. All
Eric,
right,
you
so
go next.
sorry, did you say anything?
No, don't worry. I was saying Eric. Eric will go next after you.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. So thank you, Ademola. I mean, I learned a lot from this very short mentorship section. So my question is about I mean, career and all of that. Because lately I've been seeing some job posts or vacancies in there's this group that's a Flutter Lagos community, right? The job board. So they
Okay.
post some sorry?
Yeah, go on. I said okay.
Yeah. So they post some job vacancies, and when I go through the requirements, I'm always like, God, I beg, God, please do not forsake your son. Right? So
Yeah.
and I get to see something like must have experience using with Swift, something links like they just call some sorry?
Yeah, okay, go on.
Yeah, I mean they just call some some requirements that has to do with coding and programming. They'll be like have experience with Node.js, must be good Node.js, something blah 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 blah, and I'll be like from like how like I
I get you.
understand how the comments might like can be, but what so my question is what are the you know the I don't want to say the top languages like one must learn as a further developer, but what are the core languages that as a budding or as
I get you.
a further dev that
Yeah, I
one
get you.
must learn just to
Okay.
be just to be at just to have an edge in the job market and
Okay.
all of that.
Yeah, thank you.
I do hope you get my questions. I tried.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
Thank you.
So the thing is that some of those companies they are overboard with some of those things they do. They will ask you for experience or tools that they are not really directly relating to the role, right? But like you said, there are some that are very important. And I would say that Swift is one of them. Kotlin is one of them. It's important that you know at least a little bit of the native side. Like I said, every Flutter project would have an Android folder, an iOS folder, because I mean it's cross-platform. So a time might come that you would require those skills. Let me give you an example. So last 2 years, was it last 2 years or last year? I was working on a particular project and I we needed to connect our application to a Bluetooth device. Now, there are packages for that and it's working fine. Now, the problem is that you would have to go to your settings first to pair that printer, connect it first, and then go to the application before you can use it. Now, that is kind of dicey. So the project people wanted the application to connect directly to the printer directly from the app. And those are because there are low-end printer where they communicate to the native part. And Flutter is a cross-platform. Now, for you to be able to achieve low-end connection for Bluetooth, you need Swift and Kotlin. Swift if you're bidding for iOS, Kotlin if you're bidding um for Android. Now, a reasonable company will not say, "Oh, they hire you for Flutter." They can't say they can't force you to now. But it's very good that you at least you should have an idea on those. I took a Swift course, and that really helps me because now when this problem came, somebody built the plugin for Swift, but you can't use Swift plugin in a Flutter application. So what I did is I had to write a package, a Flutter package for it, building on the Swift package that had been written by somebody else. So in other words, I converted the Swift plugin to a Flutter package and published it. Now use that package in my pub spec to do whatever connection I want to do on the app. You see now that kind of thing, if I don't have Swift experience, I would not be able to do that. So in some cases, sometimes your job might require that you would do even your normal when it comes to running the application. Trust me, sometimes those guys are the one that will give you a lot of problems, especially Gradle issues or Kotlin on Android rather. So if you don't have a little bit idea, you will get frustrated. So if I understand if companies are saying that they want you to have you're a Flutter developer, but they want you to have at least little experience with either Kotlin or Swift, yeah, that is still valid. But when they go overboard is when they start mentioning, oh, you must know how to use Golang, you must know how to use Node. Are they hiring you as a full stack? You must know how to use this and that. No. So those are the basic. If you know how to use your Git workflow, either GitHub, Gitbucket, Azure, you know how to use, you know a little bit of Swift or Kotlin, what of that too, you know a little bit of a little bit of CI/CD, that's continuous integration and continued development. For example, I use Code Magic. I'd never used it before, but there was a time when I first resumed at my full-time role. They said they don't want APK as a link or APK to be sent directly. they want it like when I push to development, like automatically, you get when you push to a particular branch, it should build an APK automatically and send to everybody who will test. So we had to build a CICD. Do you understand? So that's why I said if you go through some of those JDs, you would see you will still need somebody to advise you. Actually, you will see some of the things you need to learn. They will mention in there that okay, you should know CICD, for example, maybe Code Magic, at least have an idea. If it's push notification, maybe Firebase or Netcore, yeah, all of that. So sometimes those tools that are not really directly relating to your main skill is they are important, they are needed, but most of the times some of those things they listed are overboard. I don't know if that answers your question. Swift, Kotlin, Git workflow, Firebase, Netcore, Code Magic. Yeah, those are some of from the ones I can list from the top of my head.
All right. So you said like you answered my questions, right? So just
Okay.
to just to repeat what you said. So you said CICD, that's Code Magic,
Yeah.
Netcore, right? You also said
Yeah.
Netcore, right?
Yeah. Depends on
Firebase and
push notification, either Netcore or Firebase.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So are you also open to I mean of course you should, I mean, to connections on LinkedIn and all that, just in case one has
So yeah, sure.
right. So actually this I'm asking is because maybe we might have like an interview to prepare for. So like are you open to doing like
No
a
problem.
mock interview or something like that? You know what I mean?
No problem.
Just
Yeah.
to all right, thank
Yeah.
you.
No problem. Thank you. Okay. Who's next?
Okay. Thank you very much,
You're
Ademola,
welcome.
Ademola, for the heads up and the tips. The tips are really, they're really many.
You're welcome.
And I just want to ask, like some of these Flutter communities, like, could you give like one or two that are, especially for newbies, like the people are just,
Okay.
like, are there like,
Shopper community.
yes,
Okay, okay, okay.
not just Telegram, I mean like maybe Discord or
WhatsApp.
WhatsApp or the likes. Yeah, that could be well fitting. At least one could be able to like get wind of
Okay. I
maybe.
think Kosi mentioned one. Flutter Lagos. I'm also in that group and they are very helpful. Very, very
Yes, I
helpful.
I I
I
think
also have
I will drop the link here now. I think I still have
yeah,
that. I
you
still have
can drop. I have couple of some that I created too. I could add you guys.
All right.
I have a job pool also. Could add you guys.
Okay.
So yeah,
We,
Okay,
we
sorry,
really
I just wanted to come in here.
no
Mr.
problem.
Demola, so all of these links, please just send it to me so I
Okay, okay.
can
So you can reach out to Timmy on that. Okay, yeah.
yeah,
I'll forward them to you.
okay.
thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And then there's one more thing concerning because I'm quite a bit aware that Flutter could be used in for gaming development. Okay? Because that language has the C sharp, some elements
Yeah.
like that. So, like, I've not really gone into that, but I'm just curious about how easy it will be to be able to master the that language and
Mm,
development and combining
okay.
it, being able to do it for gaming apps.
Okay. Yeah. So for gaming, to be honest, I have not really worked on the commercial sort of commercial application for gaming, but I built a couple of personal games, right? I would say it's not really that Flutter uses it's not standalone. You have to learn Flame. Don't know if you've heard of Flame. Flame. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's a package too. So you need to know some of those syntax. And trust me, there are a lot. Yeah, is a lot, but but it's something. At the end of the day, there is nothing like a lot. When you calm down and look at it, you will see that you can actually use it. So Flutter plus Flame Effect.
Okay.
I think most of the games you can build with Flutter is 2D games. I'm correct. Then you have to learn custom painting. Custom painting is that's know how to do custom paint. You need to the way you use your column in your
Yeah.
normal. That's how you'll be using custom painting and all of that. So it's a very deep part of Flutter. So, but I would say that you look into Flame as a package. It has a documentation and check it. You would see all those scale effect and all those things. But is it possible? Yes, very possible. There are applications online, 2D majorly, that are built with Flutter, but they are not to be compared to Unity games and all that. But you can also build something with Flutter.
Okay. All right then. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay.
Yep. Awesome.
Okay, so yeah, so this question might be a little bit weird, right? But I
Okay.
mean, it's just to prepare our hearts, our mind, rather. So,
Okay.
was I mean, if we are to like give like motivation or advice, I mean, what is that like that art truth? I don't know. I mean, let me use that word for lack of like I mean, what will you say? I mean, the art truth or the truth about this learning journey and all of that. And I
Yeah,
mean, no pampering. I mean, no pampering and not to pamper and all of
I
that.
guess.
Just
I
you
guess
get, yeah.
it's yes. So the truth is, you have to figure out things yourself. That's the hard truth. Really, nobody's coming to help you. So yes, there are communities that will help you and all of that. But I've learned that the things you figure out yourself, right, stays with you forever. Like, I mean, I have someone I was tutoring, is also working for Sterling right now. So about I think 4 months ago, he was really struggling with API implementation. He came to my place. I could actually just write it for him, but I wanted him to go through the phase. It was burning out. Seriously. I was just looking at him and I was like, "Ah, am I wicked? I'm not wicked, but so there's that you need to go through it. Seriously. You need to figure it out yourself. As much as there are helps out there, yeah. But sometimes you need to figure it out yourself. This thing I'm saying is very important. It has helped me many times. There are really stone time, or how do I put it now? Timeline in my career that this has helped me. When I was working on the first job I got, the senior guy that was there before I came, he already resigned. He just spent 1 month. And I was left alone to the biggest code base I've ever seen at that time. I didn't even understand one thing. And I mean, I had to figure out so many things myself. I was reaching out, but people were busy. But at least anytime they are free, they will help me out. But then there were so many. Plus the fact that I didn't learn that very well from start. I had a lot of issues. It was like I wasn't going to like succeed. But I just kept like going on and on. I'll sit down with it, watch tutorials, sit down with it, watch tutorials, sit down with it until I started understanding. Nobody explained to me. I started figuring out that okay, this is why this is this, this is why this is this. And then I ended up fixing a particular bug that the guy couldn't even fix. And it was really high on my KPI. You get so a similar thing happened at Polaris too. The net thing I mentioned, there was a senior guy that was there before I came. Spent about 4 months trying to, work on Netcore. At that time, Netcore was really, really a hard thing to work on because the documentation was not updated. There were a lot of settings you need to do when you're installing the SDKs. So I understand, especially iOS. So the guy couldn't figure it out. For 4 months they were on it. And I came after a while, was given the task. I didn't know somebody was on it before. But I spent, trust me, I don't like leaving something undone. So it disturbs me. So I'm always on it day and night in the midnight, reading. The documentation could not help me. So what will you do when documentation cannot help you? When most people, even in your community, has not really used it too, because Netcore is not as popular as Firebase. But that is what the company requires. That's what they wanted you to use. So what would you do? You have to. So I started reading up, searching online. I searched, I scrubbed, looked through Stack Overflow. At that time, there was no AI and all of those things. Now there is AI. I'll tell you, sit down with that thing. That thing is your best friend. The kind of question I ask AI, I ask foolish, very foolish questions. Ask questions that I know the answers to, but I want the thing to explain to me in another way. Do you understand? Just to expand my understanding. Ask ask questions, ask questions. So I will just say that nobody real. It will get to a point where you will call and there's nobody. What are you going to do? Just stand your ground and make sure that you don't relent. Like, okay, this thing, I want to understand it. I just don't want to do it. I want to do it and do it well. Because another thing is when you do something well, you will get recommended. All of these things that I said I did, and they brought other jobs, they brought bigger contracts and all of those things. So those are the advantages. When you sit down with something and say, this thing and me and you today, I have to understand you. Honestly, trust me, you will. So that's the truth. I don't know if that answers your question. I to say, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Any other person? Okay. Tell me. I think.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Ademola, for today's session. Before I wrap it up, any other person with a question? Okay. So in the absence of no other question,
Sorry. There was a question that came up. I wanted to ask. Like you were talking about, you have to know you have to know how to negotiate.
Yeah.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, I wanted to ask, like, presently,
Yeah.
what is like a salary range that one can command, like as a as somebody that has worked for like a year, you
Okay. You
doing
have
apps
working experience for a year.
for a year, yes. And
Mm.
like what kind of salary can one command? Like if you want to ask for basically
Okay.
in Nigeria, knowing
Like,
fully well that
there's
outside
inflation
Nigeria,
everywhere.
yes. Okay.
Okay. So if you had asked that question about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I would say maybe 200 for a year or 2 years experience. But now, seriously, now, except you just want to do it. I don't advise anybody taking, like, I repeat, don't misquote me, except you want to do, you just want to do it because maybe there is no better option. But I wouldn't advise anybody with 2 years experience or a year to take a job that will pay less than 250. That range, 250 to 350 a year or 2 years. 3 years above 350 and above, because seriously, inflation, things are very on the high side, and these companies, they know that, but like I said, they want to reduce cost. So you have to know your worth and stand your ground. That, okay, this is what I want. This is what I want. I made that mistake. Some of these things I'm speaking to you guys about was some of the mistakes I made in one of the companies that I will just not mention the name, but one of those companies, they can actually pay more than they offered me. But because I didn't really understand all of those things, they just asked me, okay, what were you earning in the last place? Okay, so they use that previous um pay to determine the next thing they'll pay me. So, and seriously, what you're earning, where you are coming from, should not influence what you will earn here. You are delivering value, so you will be able to, you'll be the one to be able to convince them that, okay, this is what I'm earning, but this is what I want, because I know that this is the value that I can deliver. But don't be greedy about it. Seriously, don't be greedy about it. Just just do the right thing. I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Mr. Ademola, I wanted to ask. So
Mm.
you said 250 to 300. Are we talking
Yeah.
pounds,
No,
dollars,
not
or
pounds. So
naira?
we're talking in context of naira.
Eh. Okay.
Yes, not
All right.
pounds.
I
Okay.
thought I thought you were,
No,
it's
no.
I have
fine.
a
So
question, please.
foreign
I have a
foreign
question.
gig is a different topic on its own.
All right, Tosin, go ahead.
All right. So, I mean, I promise. This is my last question. I promise. So,
Oh.
um, I'm so glad you mentioned that you are also a recruiter. Like, you just dey give me
Yeah.
joy. I don't know why, but I know say in future we'll meet. So, my question is, what can you say to most companies that they will ask you during the interview that can you build can you build 2 apps in a month? I know I'm saying this actually, so because
I
so
get you.
yeah. So I mean, what do you have to say to them with your church mind?
Ah, so when HRs or companies come to meet me, they need developers. Because I'm a developer too, right? There are different kind of questions I ask them, because I've had issues where I will recommend someone or hire someone for them, and the guy will say, "Oh, these people, they are treating me like this and all of that." So I ask them, for how long? Is it full time? Is it contract? What's the is it remote or hybrid or on site? What project are they working on? Is there a add line delivery time? Do you understand? Because I want to understand, and that will also help me profile the kind of person I'm bringing in. So if they want somebody that needs to meet a very, very tight deadline, I know that, okay, this is the kind of person this guy is very good and fast and faithful and all of that. But it's still wrong, because you can't, there's a particular fintech application we just rounded up. It took 3 very good guys 6 months, although most of those months were for testing and testing and testing because it had to do with money. It took 6 months to build. And I'll be hearing and seeing JDs where people will say, I want you to help me build a fintech in 2 months. One person. It's not possible. If it's possible, I promise you that application will be buggy, like full of bugs. If you build it in 1 month, you will use 4 months to fix bugs. So usually I don't like to take those kind of this thing. I don't like to recruit for those kind of, except I just share it. If you want to do it, I can just share it on my group, anybody that wants to, but personally refer someone for those kind of unreasonable, any JD that is unreasonable, any condition that is not unreasonable. It's not fair on developers, because I'm also a developer, so I understand how it feels and all of that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, boss. Yes, boss. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I sent you a connection request on LinkedIn.
All right,
Yes.
no problem.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so before Ikena goes with his question, there is a question in the chat section from Emmanuel. He says that what learning structure would you recommend for somebody coming up, like a newbie
Okay.
per se?
I think I should share my. I didn't prepare a slide, but I have a document for all of the things I talked about. That was the first part, the technical skills roadmap I talked about. So I'll share it with Tammy so that you guys can have that document too. Is that fine,
Yeah,
Tammy?
or yeah, that works. Thank
Okay.
you.
Mm.
So Ikena, you can go ahead with your question. Okay.
So much for the class. Thank you so much.
We can't hear you. I
Very,
don't know if it's
very.
just me, but
Your
I
voice
can't
is
hear you.
very
Can you hear me?
It's a
coming up.
bit better now.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for the class. I want to ask, this based on your training and the experience, which
Yeah.
kind of computer would you recommend? Would you recommend more of a GPU enabled desktop
Which kind of
or
what?
maybe
Sorry.
computer? I mean, capacity. Do you recommend a GPU enabled system or just
Sorry. A
uh,
what? I'm struggling to hear you.
okay? Let me type it. Let me type it in
All
the
right.
comment.
Because I can't. Or does anybody hear? You can type it.
Okay, I've sent it.
Okay, so do you need me to
Okay.
read the question out?
I've seen
Um,
it.
all right,
Based
cool.
on your experience as a developer, what kind of system specification will you recommend? Like a GPU enabled system or just a regular Mac Pro? Yeah, Mac Pro will suffice. In fact, if you cannot afford Mac, your Windows will still work for a while. So because I mean, depending on your pocket, I started with Windows and I was still building. So that is why CI/CD is important. So you can actually build for iOS with Windows, but it has to be through a CI/CD, maybe Code Magic, or I think there are some other one, Test Fairy. I've used Test Fairy, I've used Code Magic, but the most convenient way is to have a MacBook as a mobile developer because I mean you'll be in charge, in full control of your application. You'd be able to push to test flights, deploy to App Store. You'd be able to build app bundle, upload to Play Store, upload to your console, deploy to Play Store. So I don't think there is any special GPU to use, right? If your MacBook can suffice, your MacBook Pro, your very good, strong window can suffice too. But if you are to aim, if you have that choice, go for a MacBook. That's just what I would say. If you're going for the MacBook, go for the M series. That's the Apple chip. Yeah. I mean, you're gonna say what will suit you to do to work. It doesn't hang. You build very fast. I mean, all of those things increase your development and productivity. Yeah, that's just it.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Ademola.
You're welcome.
Um, So one thing I would say for everybody in this class is, I mean, based off of what we've heard from Mr. Ademola, we should understand that in this field, in this race to becoming a professional in the mobile development industry, you must be resilient, you must be determined, and you must also be consistent with your growth. Take it personal, take it like a pain in your, what's it called, a sword that won't just go. So just ensure that you continuously put in the work to